the universe, God, the point of living, the soul. Why does shit suck all the time? These are questions that everyone thinks about. Everyone thinks about the place in the universe, the reason for all the suffering, and God, and if there even is one. Most religions preach peaceful meditation, divine connection through prayer, chanting, community even, and some employ manipulative tactics to alter people's perception of reality and isolate them from the outside world and the people who aren't part of the institution that they believe in. I'm not insinuating anything. I'm just stating a fact. And yes, we are talking about the thing that Tom Cruise is a part of, or was. I don't know if he still is. I didn't really look that hard. But so is John Travolta, or he was, I think. It doesn't matter. We're talking about Scientology. This whole video is going to consist of a lot of alleged crimes and alleged horrible things, and I'm not claiming that any of these things are real, and for my own safety, I am just relaying what the internet already has on it, and I don't want to get got by the Scientology people, so everything I say is alleged. Scientology claims to not just be something you believe, but something that you do, stating that it is a new kind of religion, one based in scientific evidence, using complex math and nuclear physics rather than a faith-based system, providing exact steps and a structure that people can follow to enlightenment, or their version of enlightenment. I don't really know where the whole nuclear physics part comes into that, outside of the beginning of life on Earth sort of thing. And even then, it's not really anything super immaculate or scientific, so maybe somebody knows more than I do, but I don't see that coming into play. But maybe I just don't get it. Maybe I'm just a goy and I just don't understand the immaculate knowledge of L. Ron Hubbard. But that's just me. Like any institution with any form of power, there is a plethora of crime and controversies and criminal accusations within the practices and the official members. Specifically with Scientology, it ranges from forced abortions, forced child labor, and what is known as the whole. Also, this would probably be a great time for viewer discretion. I probably should have said it earlier, but here we are. The Church of Scientology has been labeled not just a religion, but a cult or a business, and some countries going as far as labeling it as a scam. Which, I mean, look at this guy. This is David Miscavige. I think that's how you say his name. He is the head guy now. Kind of looks like a business guy. Looks like a stockbroker, not necessarily a man of God, but that's just me. That's just me. And the whole God thing as well, it gets really confusing once we get deeper into their theology and stuff, so just bear with me. The church has been involved in a number of controversies and legal disputes based on its alleged crimes of sexual abuse, like I said, forced labor, specifically with children, all kinds of mental and physical abuse, forced marriages, and its relationship with those who are ex-members who speak out about these crimes or alleged abuses. Scientology is found all throughout the world and is labeled differently in different countries, some granting it religious status while others claiming it to be a non-religious business, and some labeling it as a corporate enterprise that needs to be under government supervision. Which, for me, if I were to pick a new religion, I don't think that would be something on the top 10 candidates' resume. You know what I'm saying? This video is going to be kind of like a list of everything from the foundation to their theology to their practices to the controversies and so on. It will not be everything. I could not cover everything there has to do with Scientology in one video. It would be so immense, and this video is already going to be kind of long. So don't come at me because it's ridiculous. Scientology finds its roots in scio, a Latin word meaning knowing in the fullest sense of the word, and logos, which is Greek, meaning study of. Thus, Scientology means knowing how to know. According to their website, they believe, quote, man is a spiritual being endowed with abilities well beyond those which he normally envisions. And they claim that through their practices, they can help you achieve these powers that we all are supposed to have. They also claim that their practices are going to improve your life and change everything about your life, from your health to your social life to finances to everything. And this comes from the fact that it's based on, like, the original manuscript is supposed to be a self-help book. So, but we're going to get into that in a further section in the video. Another point that I thought was kind of confusing at first, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, so this is the symbol that they use. Now, it looks very reminiscent of like the cross, which is found in Catholicism and Christianity. However, they are not associated with any of that. The beliefs are pretty vague in what the practices consist of as a whole. Now, there's some stuff you can find online, but they're very secretive about their, like I mentioned, steps to enlightenment, I guess you could call them. And it's kind of structured in a way that you aren't really revealed the secrets and the teachings until you've already achieved a certain status in the church, so you're already kind of in it. It's not just like open to the public to see everything. So it's already off to a great start, in my opinion. However, on their website, there is like a creed sort of thing that has certain bullet points that they claim to value. And I wanted to include this because it's really important that you remember some of these points when we talk about some of the not nice things that happen in the Church of Scientology. They claim that all men of whatever race, color, or creed were created with equal rights, so that's cool. That all men have inalienable rights to their own religious practices and their performance. So this means that you can be a Scientologist and practice any other religion, and this is also something that a lot of Scientologists claim. Now, this next part is really important to keep in mind later, all right? Lock in. And we of the church believe that the laws of God forbid man to destroy his own kind, to destroy the sanity of another, to destroy or enslave another soul, or to destroy or reduce the survival of one's companions or one's group. Now, write those down or something, because they're going to come up a lot more. This video is going to be massive, so I kind of broke it down into like a list, starting at the beginning with L. Ron Hubbard. L. Ron Hubbard was born in Nebraska in 1911. However, he spent a large portion of his early childhood traveling and exploring Southeast Asia because his father was stationed in a naval base in Guam. In 1930, he enrolled in George Washington University to study civil engineering. However, he dropped out during his second year because of bad grades and other academic issues. One being that he tried to plan a trip to the Caribbean with some schoolmates, and this ended with them burning an effigy of him on campus. Don't really know how you achieve that. Seems like not the vibe, but I'd probably drop out too, honestly. Between 1934 and 1940 is probably the most significant part of his life outside of obviously founding Scientology and what people know him for the most. During this time, he wrote hundreds of pulp science fiction and fantasy novels. A lot of these, you can find these, I find them at bookstores all the time. I've seen them at Goodwill. And these did gain some recognition and some fame, not anything super crazy, but this did kind of financially support him to an extent. Then and during World War II, Hubbs was a commander of two separate battleships, two separate times. However, each time he was kicked out of the position for all sorts of military-related, not following order issue type deals. He also spent the majority of his last few months in the military in the hospital for, quote, a variety of complaints. Now, this is significant because I believe this time in his life is when we start to see the first ideas that will later become Scientology start to form in his mind. And the reason that is because he was found writing certain affirmations to himself about the ailments that he had included. And so, for an example, your stomach trouble you used as an excuse to keep the Navy from punishing you, and that his eyes had gone bad when he, quote, used them as an excuse to escape the Naval Academy. Now, I'm bringing this up because he was super big into affirmations. And Scientology, at least the foundations of it, kind of have to do with it. Like, I believe it's on theme with some of the other things that come out of Scientology, or at least the early stages of it. And this is then also affirmed by his time with the occult. After he was released from the military, he moved in with John Jack Whiteside Parsons, who at the time was the lead follower of Aleister Crowley. Now, if you don't know who Aleister Crowley is, he deserves his own video. He's like the guy when it comes to the occult and like magic and weird alien deity people things. I'm going to spare you the details of the things that they did during the occultness period in his life, but I'm going to read this to you because it's so wild. I just had to include this a little bit. John viewed Hubbard as unusually sensitive to occult forces. Definitely not stroking the ego here. John and John's girlfriend and Hubbard got heavily involved in sex magic and occult rituals with the intent to summon the incarnation of Babylon as a moonchild. I'd follow him if he started a religion. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I don't know what a moonchild is, but like this, even if nothing happened, I feel like that can't be good for your psyche. You know, like that can't be good for your brain. During this time, L. Ron Hubbard would write a document titled Affirmations, exactly about what it implies with the name, claiming that these are things that could be said to help fix physical, psychological, social, and any kind of issue that you were having, that these affirmations could be said and believed, and if you said them enough times, it would change the environment and the life that you're living. Kind of like manifest, like that kind of stuff, but L. Ron Hubbard occult edition, which I'm not shitting on. You know, I do think that your mind plays a huge role in how you perceive living and life, and like if you tell yourself you're sick, you could convince yourself that you're sick, or if you're happy, you can convince yourself that you're happy. The mind is an extremely powerful tool that you should cultivate, and you know, I'm not saying that don't do this or that you should do it all the time. I'm just saying that coming from somebody who tried to summon a moonchild via the rituals of Aleister Crowley might not be the best person to take advice from. Or maybe that he knows way more than the average person. He probably does. Maybe fuck, what do I know what I'm talking about? Potentially, Hubbard's most famous quote came in 1948 when he claimed, quote, "You don't get rich off of writing science fiction. If you want to get rich, you start a religion." Really awesome. Definitely seems divine, in my opinion. This leads directly into the foundation of Scientology, known as Dianetics. In 1950, L. Ron Hubbard wrote Dianetics, the Modern Science of Mental Health, and established organizations to push and practice the teachings of Dianetics as a self-help book. And I actually have a copy right here. Sorry. I found it at a bookstore, like a used bookstore, for like $4, and it's just one of those things. It's kind of like for the novelty, you know, like I have like a bunch of different religious texts, like the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the Bible, all that kind of stuff, you know, the basics. And then there's some like more new agey ones in there too that I have, but I just felt like if I'm going to do a video, I feel like I should have something. Like I just felt, I don't know, just how many people do you know that have this? I was curious because I feel like anybody at this point, you know, especially in modern times, maybe it's different from in the 50s, but I feel like anyone could write a self-help book, just affirmations, drink water, get some sunlight, like all that. He claimed it was inspired by a near-death experience he had during a dental exam. And then when he didn't die, he was inspired to write this based on whatever it is that he experienced. That was in 1950, and then now in 1951, his wife said that medical professionals had diagnosed him with paranoid schizophrenia and recommended lifelong hospitalization. 2 years later, he started Scientology in 1953. I'm not insinuating anything. I'm just reading what I found on the Wikipedias. Scientology, as I've already stated, is based on the teachings of Dianetics, sort of. And Dianetics is an attempt to explain with scientific evidence the relationship between the soul and the physical body. Dianetics claims that the human mind has two parts, the conscious analytical mind and the subconscious reactive mind. And the practices of Dianetics was thought of to kind of access the subconscious mind. And we're going to get into that a little bit. Now, Dianetics was originally thought of as a potential treatment in real psychological circles, psychology circles. However, it was quickly determined more of a pseudoscience and ineffective at what it claimed to be doing. However, our boy Hubbs believed that through Dianetics and what will be later called auditing, you could access this subconscious part of your mind, and people then could become superhuman-like beings. Thus, Scientology. Want to be a superhero? I'm Scientology boy. I can throw people off boats and not give them food because they want to have premarital sex. I don't know. The practice known as auditing is there to assist somebody in becoming clear, or what they kind of claim is sort of like an enlightenment in a way. Auditing is the process using an e-meter, which is a device, here's a picture, where you hold like two soup can looking tubes. There's an auditor who sits adjacent you, asks you a bunch of questions, and what it does is it sends a electronic wave through one hand, and it passes it through your body into the other one, into the e-meter. And then based on your responses and the mind activity and the shifts in your perception and all that, that is what triggers this needle to move on the e-meter. And this is supposed to help relieve burdens and other mental blockages, and bring forth memories that you might not remember from your subconscious reactive mind to the conscious analytical mind. And like low-key, like it kind of seems like maybe it could work. Like it's a kind of a cool idea. However, it seems to not be that way when you look at there's a reason why the medical field and psychologists don't use it anymore. Something else that is brought up with auditing is how the e-meter and the practice of auditing and the practices of Dianetics help you move up what is known as the bridge of total freedom, which is the system in which Scientologists follow to get to what is called being clear. Then each step is passed after a certain amount of auditing. It's about to get really confusing if it isn't already. Now, I'm still a little confused, but the end goal, sort of the bridge of total freedom is to get to a spot in which you are cleared, or also known as an operating thetan. Now, once you get to that point, there are stages within being cleared, or operating thetan level 1, 2, 3, and so on, that you then are able to receive better knowledge and more teaching. So once you become enlightened, you can then become enlightened. A little side note before we continue, each section, each step on the bridge of total freedom costs money, some costing as little as $75, and some costing upwards of $500,000 or more once you reach the upper echelon of operating thetans and clear levels and all that other stuff. I definitely feel like God wants people to pay for these things. I think God is behind a paywall, and that you have to pay a monthly subscription for your enlightenment powers, or L. Ron Hubbard himself are going to take them away from you. According to L. Ron Hubbard, people who've become cleared or finished the operating thetan levels would possess a fully optimized mind and a heightened intelligence, so their IQ would basically go through the roof, and everything else that he claims that these people would have comes off very much like dude, bro, grind, hustle, man, power, extra grind, wake up at yesterday and grind, like alpha brain. It comes off very much like that. So if you're into that, maybe Scientology's for you. I don't know. If you want to optimize your brain, maybe you can follow Xenu and, the Thetans. More on that later. He also claimed that those who became clear would be free from all ailments ranging from poor vision to the common cold. And this is going to be a quote from Dianetics. I'm actually really excited because I like the book. These are some things that can be cured by being clear. He claimed that the sexual pervert, such as homosexuality, lesbianism, sexual sadism, could be cleared, and people can be cured of that via Dianetics and auditing. So you can't be gay. Insisted that all of these things that just mentioned, from the eyesight, the cold, and being gay, are psychosomatic. Psychosomatic refers to the physical illness or symptoms that is caused, triggered, or worsened by mental factors such as stress, anxiety, or even trauma. Everybody likes me a good old faith healing now, don't we? But this one through science, like nuclear fusion and big brain alpha, mankind is superhuman powers. L. Ron Hubbard claimed that all of the physical issues, physical ailments, mental issues, and illnesses are all caused by what is known as an engram. In Scientology, an engram is a memory that you don't remember because it occurred as a traumatic impression or a traumatic image that happened when you were fully conscious or partially conscious. This is where the subconscious mind bringing forth things from auditing comes in, and this will also be a crucial part when we start talking about Thetans and how those influence us and whatever those are. I think this is a really important thing to bring up because while you're being audited by somebody, they are sitting across from you, and how it works, from my understanding, is that, if we were auditing right now, I was auditing you, I'd be like, bring up a traumatic issue, and then you would talk to me about it, and then I'd have you keep doing it until you started to remember things, or more things became clear, or things became, in the video that I watched, it was like, until the person's laughing or smiling, has a positive attitude. But basically, it's like, are you sure you remember that correctly? The meter doesn't say that you're saying everything correctly. Do it again. Are you sure you're saying you remember everything correctly? Because that's not what the meter's saying. And to me, I feel like you could start to brainwash people that way by slowly maybe influencing. Oh, are you sure it wasn't like this? Because meter might say otherwise. And then, maybe it was like that. And I think there is a connection there to be made between potential brainwashing and giving people false memories via this machine, in the sense. I'm not claiming that Scientology does that. It's just a connection that I made in my own conspiracy schizo brain. It's just, just laying it out there. Now let's talk about the theology behind Scientology. Now, we've referenced what is known as a Thetan a few times, and a Thetan is basically their idea of a soul, and it's this immortal, true state of being that all humans are, that is separate from the mind and body that it inhabits and controls, and that it identified with its creation of the material world and fell from grace for its own pleasures, and that's why humanity is here. Now, this is cool, and I mean, this is just every, creation story or soul story ever in any other religion. However, in Scientology, they believe that you are reincarnated over and over again until you've been cleared. And maybe this is influenced from the Eastern stuff, but I don't know. Thetans are also supposed to have, as we mentioned earlier, these powers that are being suppressed because we are full of blockades and other issues, and that through auditing, we are able to then clear ourselves and reach the levels of operating Thetans on the end, of the bridge to total freedom. However, no one ever gets there, because once you reach operating Thetan level 1, there's 8, and some people even claim there's up to 20 or some shit like that. Now, on the bridge, I think there's only 8, but then depending on where you get your information from, there could be a ton. So it's kind of in my opinion, coming off as one of those things of like, oh, well, when you achieve this, you'll be good. Oh, you achieve that? Well, it's not actually real, so let's make up extra things that you have to invest your time into. That's kind of how it comes off for me. Again, just my opinion. However, he's not wrong if you convince people that they're going to be saved from how horrible life is and you charge them $1 bajillion. I mean, I feel like that's how a lot of public speakers and motivational speakers get their money, low key. I mean, like, people just want to be told that it's going to be fine. Just do their self-help program and their routine and they'll be good. And they'll just keep paying you. Maybe I shouldn't make YouTube videos. Maybe I should just do that. Now, within these levels of operating Thetan, there are, from what I've seen, the ex-members that kind of speak out against the practices is that once you reach those higher and more expensive steps, they introduce these ideas that, oh, you've cleared, your Thetan or whatever, but it turns out that you have more Thetans attached to you in this spot or like over here or in this part of your mind, and you have to then clear those Thetans. And based on the accounts that I've seen, that cycle just kind of continues as you go up the chain of command, basically. And then another thing too that is mentioned from these accounts is that these Thetans that are attached from you are what's causing all your suffering. And in my eyes, it's kind of weird because at first it's framed, oh, your Thetan is this soul, this like perfect version of yourself, like the thing that has all these powers, and that you have to purify yourself to experience your true self, right? Like, but then, oh, but your Thetan is causing you to suffer, and all these other Thetans are causing you issues and stuff, and it's like, you got to pick a lane, my guy. Like, is it good or is it bad? Or, I would assume maybe that other people's Thetans are bad, but like, if the Thetan is just like a pure soul, then like, what does that mean for like having multiple? It just, in my mind, it starts to kind of fall in on itself, and maybe somebody can explain the comments a little more for myself and maybe others, but that's just kind of how I kind of look at it, and that's when I start to get confused. So you're wondering, how did this happen? How did this happen? Like this? Why are the Thetans here on Earth? Why are we here? The Thetans came here because the ruler or dictator of the Galactic Federation noticed that the planets were becoming too overpopulated, and so he took half the population and he froze them, and then he launched them into the volcanoes on Earth and then blew up the volcanoes with nuclear hydrogen bombs, which then released the Thetans, and then that's how they became attached to us, and then we are supposed to clear them out of us or away from us and all that. So there's Thetans everywhere attached to everything, and as a Scientologist, your job is to clear them and purify everything. I think. Allegedly, I guess. And then with the whole, like, you have more Thetans attached to you thing with the Bridge of Total Freedom and all that, they are attached to you in clusters so that you have to then, each step is removing more and more clusters of Thetans from this event with Xenu. Now, how did L. Ron Hubbard come up with this? It's a little finicky on, like, the origins of this. It kind of just sounds like a sci-fi novel, which would probably be believable since, that's kind of how he made his money. But there are accounts that said that he claims that he used his own practices, like the auditing and Dianetics and all that, to then gain this knowledge. He also, at some point, allegedly claimed to be the reincarnation of Buddha, but that's besides the point. Little side story, not a lot of people in Scientology claim to believe this. Kind of. Again, it's all kind of like what, maybe, sort of, because they're very, very secretive. That L. Ron Hubbard is going to be reincarnated. That he, quote, dropped his body to pursue more scientific research, and that he will one day return. And that each church has a room dedicated in preparation for this day. It's kind of seen as like an office shrine room. Oh, no. Oh, this is my new cat. Oh. This is Gertie. She's a Persian kitty. She's really small. She's a rescue, so don't come at me with the in the comments, because I know it's inhumane to breed them. But she was a rescue that we took in because we wanted her to have a good home. So, none of that. We couldn't say no. Like, we felt really bad. and we adopted her, so she'll be around. She's pretty gooby. She's pretty cute too, honestly. Anyway, this room is supposed to be like an office or a shrine room that has like a little statue bust thing of him, bunch of his personal effects, just like how he likes it, all set up waiting for him to return with more knowledge and all that jazz. He discusses his return in Operating Thetan 8. However, this was redacted by the church, and then they put out a refined version that didn't have that in it. However, it is kind of hard to find information about those claims because they do a lot of documents scrubbing and things like that. So don't know how to segue this other than saying we're talking about the controversies and the crime that has been allegedly happening behind closed doors in Scientology. There's a lot. First up, we have what is called the Hole. The Hole is the name of a private detention compound near the town of Hemet, California. Upwards of 100 of the top executives of Scientology have been held there, and I say held for obvious reasons that will be obvious, up to months or even years. And what it consists of is 2 trailers in a compound pushed together to create some kind of housing unit. It's not the right word for it, but I don't want to get murdered or something. Ex-members of Scientology, and specifically those that have been in the hole, have claimed that in 2002, David Miscavige, again, the guy who's at the top, he's the head leader guy, started to verbally and physically abuse those who lived there. According to one of the executives, the food was, quote, like leftovers, slop, bits of meat, soupy kind of leftovers thrown into a pot and cooked and barely edible. The building was constantly infested with ants and other bugs, was extremely cramped, and was up to 104 to 106 degrees because there would often be times where the electricity would be turned off or there was no AC unit within the building, and with 100 plus people in there, it's going to obviously be hot as shit. So the conditions within the hole are that of some kind of almost like a labor camp or a prison, a gulag even. It's kind of like a gulag. Obviously, the Church of Scientology denies that the hole exists at all, saying the hole does not exist and never has, and claims that no one has ever been held against their will. I believe that 100%. However, it does acknowledge that certain members of the church have, quote, been subjected to religious discipline, a program of ethics and corrections entered into voluntarily as part of their religious observance. It's kind of like, yeah, people will get beat sometimes, but it's because they want it. I'm just kidding. So do with that as you will. The whole, it exists. There's a lot of accounts of it. I think they're just pulling like a whole deny everything because then the FBI would get involved. And we're going to kind of talk about why the FBI doesn't get involved. A practice known as overboarding was devised in the 60s to reinforce discipline on those who need to be punished, basically. And this is more on the Sea Org side of things. However, it does, or allegedly does, take place at the hole, but instead of the ocean, it's like a pool or a lake. And what this consists of is people being bound or blindfolded or both and thrown overboard into the ocean. Or, again, like the lake or a pool or something. And those at the hole have claimed that this has happened while David Miscavige just sits there and laughs and then proceeds to abuse them. According to Mark and Claire Headley, 2 former members of the church, claimed that those in the hole were never allowed to leave without supervision and were forced to work upwards of 16 hours a day. Communication with the outside world was strictly prohibited. Most of the time, the internet and cell phone use is taken away, and mail and passports were taken and locked away in a safe somewhere so that they couldn't be accessed. And again, it just kind of really goes back to that, wanting to help people, I think. Just really trying to get that discipline in. Definitely just want to make people better. Yeah. The hole's perimeter is guarded by, again alleged, by giant fences with huge spikes and cameras turned inward, and has guards to make sure people don't escape, and if they try to, they are obviously seen. And many people who have tried to escape claim that they are pursued down by the Sea Org's pursuit team and then brought back and punished. Some of the punishments are isolation or immense interrogation. Those are just some of the more mundane punishments. I think this just really hammers home those points that we read earlier in the creed on their website. Let me just, for the sake of you guys, maybe I'll bring those back up real quick. To not destroy the sanity of another, to destroy or enslave another soul, or to destroy or reduce the survival of one's companions or one's group. Again, I really feel like that this whole thing that is definitely maybe could have been maybe not real, I think it really just hammers in those values. And I think that, at the end of the day, it really is about religious sacrifice. And I think it's definitely not about like weird power tripping or anything. I think it really just hammers in what Scientology really wants to be. And then this is where it really is going to start. I mean, if it hasn't already fallen apart, if you're even still here, it's just like, I don't quite understand how people still join anymore. And I know that like they kind of prey on, like every cult, I'm not saying it's a cult, but if it was, this is what they would do. Prey on people who are in need and like who are lonely or need help or are down bad, kind of a thing. I guess there's that, but I feel like everyone has seen videos of people talking about this, and there's Netflix documentaries and books and all sorts of stuff, and I just sucks to suck, I guess. If it wasn't obvious, this is where the claims of human trafficking and other legal disputes in that realm come from, because there is a lot of people who escape and claim that they are being held against their will. So the FBI does investigate these claims. However, the charges are usually dropped. Well, they are dropped because of things like ministerial exception, involuntary participation. Those phrases are both in relation to the First Amendment and complicate things in relation to raiding or prosecuting anyone, because a lot of people who are there, who get talked to, say they want to be there, whether that's out of fear or control or brainwashing or whatever. Again, all alleged. In my opinion, a stupid excuse, but it just seems like the legality of it all is kind of gray. So that's sort of why the Scientology route, conspiracy crimes, kind of go swept under the rug a little bit. So I mentioned the Sea Org. The Sea Org is a couple ships that was started by L. Ron Hubbard when he was being chased out of a bunch of places because he was, not necessarily the greatest dude ever. And it's kind of like his own private navy. And this is where a lot of like the more extreme and higher upper echelon people of Scientology live and practice their religion. Scientology's Sea Org has specific ranks, specific duties, specific uniforms, and when joining the Sea Org, this is where the notorious billion-year contract is signed. This contract is signed with the idea of 1 billion years of servitude to Scientology's cause. And maybe servitude might be like a bit of a harsh word in some circles. Service and or servitude could go hand in hand in some ways, I guess. And then this is also based in the idea that you are going to be reincarnated, and if you don't finish the whole clearing, operating Phaeton, Bridge to Freedom thing, you will then be reincarnated, and that this is supposed to then sort of like, I don't know, keep your soul anchored to Scientology or anything or something like that, so that when you are reincarnated, I don't get it. It's just like, I don't remember if I was reincarnated in the last life and I was a Scientologist. There are strict rules on the Sea Org, like no premarital sex, extremely long work days, working at least 100 hours a week on average, communal living, and this is all in exchange for a small allowance of $50 a week, and like I mentioned, the housing on the ships themselves. I don't want to beat this joke to death, but let's just go over that creed again, huh, everyone? Really hammering in those godly views. So for the Sea Org, a lot of people claim, or ex-members claim, that this is where the idea of not associating with anyone that isn't part of the church comes into play the strongest. Now, it is somewhat more enforced a little bit outside of that, like within just like normal living conditions and stuff. But the Sea Org is really where you start to see people not associating with family members and friends that don't support Scientology or aren't Scientologists. But what you gonna do about it? Because you gotta get to the operating level Thetan 42, and you gotta see through walls and time space. Articulum Xenu needs me. I was a general. I need it. I need to go back to the Galactic Confederation. Blah, blah. August 12th is Sea Org Day, so mark your calendars, because that is the day the Sea Org was founded. Now, every year on August 12th, the Sea Org members have to reaffirm their allegiance to the code of the Sea Org, which contains 18 points, and I'm going to read you some of them, not all of them, because I don't want to be here all day. I promise to help get ethics in on this planet and the universe, which is the basic purpose of the Sea Org, not to make a bunch of money for the elite or anything. I promise to uphold, forward, and carry out command intention. I promise to uphold the fact that duty is the Sea Org members' true motivation, which is the highest motivation there is. I promise to be competent and effective at all times and never try to explain away or justify ineffectiveness nor minimize the true power that I am. I promise to make things go right and to persist until they do. In 1974, L. Ron Hubbard introduced what is called the Rehabilitation Project Force, or RPF, which is basically a re-education program in forced labor camp that is used against members of the Sea Org that are delinquent or don't exhibit behaviors that follow the things that I just said. This includes long hours, excruciating work, limited food, and restricted and substandard living conditions. So if you're bad, you're going to get starved, and you're going to have to work manual labor, like gulag type labor camp stuff, and you got to live on a board or some shit like that. So make sure you're doing it right. Make sure you're making sure Xenu is proud, because maybe he's looking down on you. You know, you don't want L. Ron Hubbard reincarnate and, you know, not like what you're doing. This kind of reminds me of the break room from Severance. If anyone in the comments or anyone watching this has seen that show, and I'm going to spoil it, it's basically where, like, if they do something even remotely kind of bad, they go to this place called the break room where they have to sit there and repeat, like, how sorry they are over and over and over until it breaks them. Hence the name. Think that, but, like, on a boat with, like, little food, you know? Again, I'm not saying this is a cult. I'm just relaying what has already been on the internet. Many ex-members account a lot of sexual assault, coercion, and threats upon leaving, and accounts of child labor on the Sea Org. Now, child labor is something that I think is big in Scientology, I guess. Allegedly. If there's like a controversy going on, or that there's like every rabbit hole I went down had some taste of child labor. So anything like Sea Org related, chances are child labor is being enforced somehow. Allegedly. Jenna Miscavige Hill, niece of David Miscavige, wrote a book called Beyond Belief, My Secret Life Inside of Scientology and My Harrowing Escape, stated that as a child, she would work 14-hour days and be able to see her family once a week, if that. She and her family were members of the Sea Org before she escaped. I say escaped because duh. And this is just kind of a taste of what the life is like for even a family member that is in direct communication and bloodline with the person who runs the whole thing. So I can only imagine if you weren't that. You know you get what I'm saying? Then there's like accounts of like David being extremely aggressive, being a very angry, short-tempered person, and quickly moving to violence and, you know, hurting people, throwing people, yelling, hitting, attacking, all that. There's a lot of accounts of that. This leads to probably the biggest mystery in Scientology, the Scientology lore, other than, is Hubbard the Buddha? Is he Buddha Maitreya the Christ? Real thing, by the way. Maybe I'll do a video on that eventually. But the biggest mystery in Scientology lore is what happened to Shelly Miscavige. Now, this could be an entire video on its own, and this is the story of David Miscavige's wife, who hasn't been seen in almost 2 decades. So she went missing in 2007. She was briefly seen at her father's funeral in 2006 and hasn't made a public appearance since then. She was a member of the Sea Org, and the church claims that she is living a private, secluded life in pursuit of Scientology's practices and beliefs. Like, yes, all religions have monks and have people who take celibacy and never get married and don't have any worldly possessions, but given Scientology's relationship to everyone else and how David Miscavige has a lot of accounts of doing horrible things to people, again, allegedly, a lot of people think it's a little fishy because she went missing shortly after doing things directly against what David wanted to happen, and then that resulted in a big fight, and then shortly thereafter she took a quiet private life. A lot of people, especially ex-members, obviously think there is a connection to be made between these two instances. Many ex-members believe that she's being held against her will at the Twin Peaks compound of Scientology's Church of Spiritual Technology. Now, there have been 2 filed missing persons reports for Shelly, and both times they have said unfound or have, quote, located and spoke to her. Both were shut down and closed relatively shortly after opening, and Scientology kind of has this reputation of pursuing people who are celebrities or higher members of society, if you will. So conspiracy theorists draw the line between that and how short-lived these investigations were into Shelly, that maybe there was some connection between like a Scientologist in the church and Scientologists in the law enforcement of the area. I don't know. I don't claim to believe that. I just, some chatter that I've seen online. Maybe there's some manipulation, malpractice going on. Again, I'm spinning my tires. Don't believe that. Kind of. It's all alleged. Allegedly. This next section is going to be about the epic, happy relationship that Scientology has with the general public, specifically those who investigate their practices, and how much they love investigations and critics and the stories that ex-members talk about. So this is going to be a super happy section, so get ready for some fun times. Let's start with the policy of attack the attacker. This was devised by L. Ron Hubbard in 1966 because he didn't like how the public were treating Scientology or how critics were portraying Scientology, which, I mean, given everything I just said, can you really blame them? But that's besides the point. This policy includes the following points. Spot who is attacking us. Start investigating them promptly for felonies or worse using their own professionals, not outside agencies. So Scientologists using their own Scientologists to investigate people, not like hiring people outside of Scientology. Double curve your reply by saying we welcome an investigation of them. Start feeding lurid blood, sex, crime, actual evidence on the attackers to the press. So they basically are trying to ruin the reputation and public standing of those who criticize them or talk out against them, like ex-members or journalists, trying to destroy their image or paint them in a really bad light. This was devised as a, quote, correction procedure for those people. So do with that as you will. Here are some quotes from L. Ron Hubbard about this specific issue, I guess you could call it. Don't ever tamely submit to an investigation of us. Make it rough on attackers all the way. Banish all ideas that any fair hearing is intended, and start our attack with their first breath. just super awesome, just really epic. And I think this whole section can be summarized with the case involving what is known as Operation Freakout with Paulette Cooper. So she was a journalist who was criticizing Scientology, and they basically started falsely accusing her of felonies and tried to make her go crazy. She was harassed a lot, to the point where they were trying to force her to kill herself and take her own life. So that's just one account. There are tons, and this, I think, just does a good job at painting out what Scientology does to those who speak out against it, or at least claims they don't, allegedly, sort of. This case was investigated by the FBI, and they settled for out of court circumstances, whether that was money or whatever. Again, I think it just kind of shows the extent in which Scientology is going to go to protect whatever image they want to portray themselves as. There's interviews of people who have been sued to oblivion, harassed, stalked, all that kind of stuff. So if you're a reporter, don't speak out against Scientology unless you're prepared for that. With that being said, Scientology is such a rabbit hole that if this video isn't already long as shit, it could be. And I don't really want to talk about it anymore because I feel like I've spent way too much time working on the information for this video. So if you learned anything or found this interesting at all, please like and subscribe. For me personally, I feel like I've seen enough online to know that Scientology is kind of wild, and that I don't necessarily like it. Now, I think some of the ideas would be cool for a story. So, you know, there's that. I think you got to be careful I think you need to be careful where you put your faith and where you put your idea of a soul, and really use discernment and reason. You know, I think that you should obviously pursue something that you believe in, but when your human condition is trashed because of that, I think then maybe it'd be a good idea to stop. And given how ex-members describe Scientology, I think, yeah, sure, maybe could be one or two that say these things here and there, just like a company. Think about it like as a company. Like if there's a bad review, whatever. If there's a couple, you know, here or there. But if it's like a lot and they're like really bad, are you going to go with that company? That's kind of my 2 cents. My opinion is that it's a cult and a business. Given the history of L. Ron Hubbard and what he said and how it's being operated now and how you have to pay to play, basically, I don't think God or Enlightenment has a paywall. So all that is done. That's it. That's all I wrote. So I hope you have a good day, and thank you for watching. And if there's anything you'd like me to cover, and I'm sorry if I got anything wrong, I don't want to hurt anybody, or like, you know, I did my best. You know, I'm only human. So thank you for watching, and if there's anything you want to see me cover, leave it in the comments, and I will catch you guys in the next one.